Thank you for joining us around the fire. Now, want to hear a scary story?
I got you something. John reached into the bye-bye baby bag and pulled out a sleek, white box. A baby monitor. One of the fancy video ones. My 3 a.m. visits to the nursery are starting to bother you, huh? I asked with a smirk. Maybe a little. I think this'll help us both sleep better. I glanced down at the mug in my hands, my 4th cup of coffee for the day. Let's do it. We set it up in the nursery that night. I pointed the camera right at the crib and placed the monitor on the nightstand. I fell asleep watching the black and white video feed of our son, gracefully sleeping, with his face in a puddle of drool and his butt in the air. Thump. I jolted awake. I grabbed the monitor, which showed that James was sleeping peacefully, but still in the air, now in an even bigger puddle of drool. I smiled, rolled over, and fell back into a deep sleep. The next night, as John and I were getting ready for bed, I asked him about it. Last night I heard a weird sound from the baby's room. Oh, do you think we have mice again? He asked. I didn't even think about that. I turned to him. Maybe I should sleep in there tonight, just in case. You have the monitor, he said. But maybe if I was right there. He frowned. Come on, Carrie. He's over a year old. He needs to be comfortable in his own room. The monitor is here to help you work through this. I glared at him. Work through what? The anxiety, he said. Anxiety? Is that what you call concern for our child's well-being? I said goodnight sharply and pulled the covers over me. I woke up again at 3:21 a.m. Instinctively, I reached for the baby monitor. The blue light blinded me in the darkness, and I waited for my eyes to adjust. There was my little man, facing away from the camera, little tufts of hair sticking out every which way, sleeping peacefully. I set the monitor back down on the nightstand and closed my eyes. Click. My eyes flew back open. James was facing towards me now. His eyes closed peacefully. Puffy little cheeks smushed against the mattress. I forced my eyes closed. He's fine. Just go to sleep. Stop checking on him. Maybe John has a point. The fog of sleep filled my mind, melting my thoughts into dreamy nonsense. He's fine. 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 Thump. He's fine. Don't check on him. Just go to sleep. Go to... A loud cry came through the wall, then through the monitor a second later. My eyes flew open. James lay in the same position. But despite the cries coming from the nursery, his mouth was closed. What the hell? I leapt out of the bed, stumbled across the hall. I grabbed the doorknob and yanked it open, running blindly into the room. There was James lying in the crib, crying his lungs out, and a dark figure was leaning over him. Get the hell away from him! I screamed as I ran to the crib. The figure darted across the room and slipped out the window. I grabbed the baby from the crib and held him tight against my chest. James, James, are you okay? Carrie? John came stumbling in. Call the police, I shouted. Someone was here. As I held James tightly against me, something caught my eye. The baby monitor camera, its red light blinking in the darkness. There was something propped up in front of it, a piece of paper. I reached out and turned it over. It was a photo of James sleeping peacefully in his crib. I used to hack baby monitors. One night, I learned my lesson. When I was in high school, my friends and I had a peculiar pastime. Like any teenage delinquent, we used to like to cause trouble. We weren't vandals, we didn't deal drugs, and we certainly didn't bully other kids at school. No, we just liked to scare the crap out of new parents by hacking their baby monitors. We were insufferable little punks who thought we were too good to get caught, and that our little acts of mischief would go unpunished. One night, however, I learned that I wasn't quite as bulletproof as my tremendous adolescent ego made me out to be. Dimitri, Kurt, and I went to the same school, shared many of the same classes, and hung out almost every evening after dinner time. We watched prank shows, played video games, and talked about the hottest girls in school. One evening, we were trading scary stories at the park. Kurt shared the classic story of the single mother who heard a haunting voice on her baby monitor. Like most horror stories, it sounded like total BS. But Dimitri told us it had happened to his mom once. On her own baby monitor, she heard a neighbor singing to her child. Apparently, it was possible to accidentally tap into someone else's frequency. In an instant, a light bulb turned on in each of our heads. When you're close enough to someone, you don't need words to know what they're thinking, and we could all tell that we were thinking the exact same thing. We were going to buy a baby monitor and screw with people. Pardon the pun, but hacking a baby monitor is child's play. All you need is another device on the same frequency as yours. Never one to do things half-assed, I purchased a high-end monitor with a frequency dial so that we could prank as many targets as possible. The following night, we took our bikes, roamed the neighborhood, and found our first victim. We could see the nursery from the suburban home's second-floor window. Dimitri grabbed the baby monitor and began turning it to different frequencies until we heard breathing. I remember feeling excited as our plan finally came to fruition. Dimitri pressed the button and began exhaling heavily into the receiver.
Your little girl was delicious,
he murmured in a cheesy demonic voice. The light inside the larger bedroom turned on almost immediately, and we heard a shrill scream. Laughing our asses off, we quickly rode off down the street so that we didn't get caught. We repeated the prank several times over the course of the following weeks, each taking turns talking through the monitors. Not wanting anyone to get wise to our little game, we chose different houses every time. People's reactions were priceless. Some mothers would reply in a panic. Others seemed to know it was a hoax and just told us to shut up. One poor woman even started sobbing uncontrollably, begging us not to hurt her baby. I feel bad about that last one now that I'm older, but back then it was only hilarious. My friends and I mimicked her high-pitched bawling and desperate cries for mercy for weeks afterwards. Yeah, we were royal dicks. But karma's a bitch, and I got what was coming to me one night. Kurt and Dimitri were busy studying for their midterms, so I went out on my own. By then, We'd gotten pretty much everyone in the surrounding area, so I decided to cross town and into an unfamiliar territory. Finding another target wasn't difficult. You just had to look into cars for ones with baby seats, or houses with overly colorful, cartoon-themed curtains or toys in the yard. I came across a house that fit all three criteria and parked my bike out of view. Playing with the tuner, I eventually found the right frequency. I could hear the sound of a baby snoring very lightly. A devious little smirk pushed its way onto my lips, and my heart began pounding with excitement. It was my time to shine.
I am watching,
I whispered into the monitor, using the creepiest voice I could muster. The house remained dark and lifeless. I figured the owners must not have heard me.
I stand over your bed, watching, waiting. I will get you,
I said. Nothing. Just the sounds of crickets chirping and the occasional roar of a car driving down the street. It was a little odd. Parents usually reacted much quicker than that. I began feeling a little nervous and exposed. It was getting late, and I had a long bike ride home. But just when I was about to give up and leave, I heard a weird, gurgling sound coming from the monitor. The quiet, rhythmic snores had stopped, and I assumed the baby had woken up and was about to start crying. Instead, I heard a man's voice.
You're the one being watched now, Juan.
My stomach pirouetted. How did he know my name? I felt sick. Something was wrong, and I could feel it in my bones. I glanced up at the nursery window and saw a silhouette standing there watching me. Had he been there the whole time? The air was thick and difficult to inhale, though perhaps fear was making it harder to breathe. My body quivered uncontrollably as a sense of dread poured into every inch of me. I climbed on my bike, pedaling desperately to get away. Part of me thought I was overreacting, but the overwhelming need to flee overpowered my rational mind.
You can't run, Juan. I know where you live,
continued the man, even as I rounded the corner. I flew down the street, not stopping until I reached a busy intersection. Surrounded by cars and a few late-night joggers, I felt safe.
Your hoodie will run red with your blood, boy,
whispered the man through the baby monitor in my pocket. A passerby gave me a nasty look as I yelped loudly in fear, practically ripping my hoodie in my frantic attempt to remove it. To the stranger, I must have looked like some snotty kid tripping balls or something. He didn't know I was in genuine distress, so I don't blame him for walking off in a huff, though I wish he had offered me help instead. After stuffing my hoodie into my backpack, I realized that it had my name on the back of it. It was my stupid school jacket. Then it occurred to me that baby monitors had a fairly short range, so if the man could still reach me, I was obviously being followed. I nervously glanced around to try and identify my stalker, and I turned off the device and pedaled towards my home. My fear had heightened my senses, and I now noticed every motion of the trees in the breeze, every crackle of twigs under my wheels, and every car that zipped by me. I flinched whenever anyone came near, paranoid that whoever had spoken to me through the baby monitor was going to catch up. But fortunately, I made it home without incident. I parked my bike in my garage and crawled up the stairs to my bedroom. In one careless motion, I tossed my backpack and the baby monitor in the corner of my room and dove into my sheets like an Olympic swimmer. It doesn't matter how old you get, nothing feels safer than being under your blanket in bed. I closed my eyes, hoping I'd be able to calm down enough to catch a few hours of rest before class. But then I heard static coming from the monitor across the room. The monitor that I had turned off.
"Sweet dreams, Juan,"
said the voice that still haunts my nightmares. Needless to say, I didn't sleep a wink that night. I was too frightened to get out of bed until sunrise. When I got up, my first order of business was to remove the battery from the monitor and throw it into the trash. I didn't want anything to do with it anymore. With massive bags under my eyes, I got dressed, had breakfast, and went to school. A few days later, I saw the house on the news. In an interview, a police officer explained that the small family who had been living in the house had been found in their beds, their throats cut. I had been outside when it happened. The killer had heard me on the baby monitor and decided to play with me. It was definitely a wake-up call, and I thanked my lucky stars that I hadn't gotten hurt, or worse. I was too busy feeling thankful that I survived to feel bad about the family that didn't. Empathy, like wisdom, sometimes comes with age. Now that I'm an adult, with a wife and daughter, I truly understand the consequences of my actions and the severity of the situation I put myself in as a tremendously stupid teenage boy. That dreadful night, I thought I reached the epitome of fear, but as a father, I now know that fear thrives and multiplies when there's something more precious than your own life at stake. I can't say for sure whether the killer found me again after all these years, or whether a new breed of idiots had the same idea as my friends and I, but I can tell you that I now know what true terror is. Last night, I heard something on our baby monitor that shackled me with a paralyzing fear that I doubt will ever leave me.